Hello and welcome. Today is August 22nd, 2026, and this is the 5 stages of autistic burnout and recovery. And I am Heather Cook of Autism Chrysalis. By the way, this is a companion workshop to the one that I gave last month on explaining autistic burnout. If you haven't seen that one, this will work just fine as a standalone, but you might go back to that later because I get more into depth about what autistic burnout is and what causes it, and how to support people who are going through it if you're a family member or friend, clinician, therapist, etc. So, can we put the link to that one in the chat? By the way, it's also free. Okay, before we get started, I do want to explicitly state that you are welcome to participate with your camera off or on. I genuinely do not mind cameras being off. You're also welcome to move around, fidget, stim, tick, doodle, take notes, look away, go away and come back, eat. Please take care of your own needs. There are lots of ways to pay attention. It doesn't have to just be sitting still, looking at the presenter like we were taught in school. Okay, and I want to be upfront about what to expect today because a lot of free webinars turn out to be a sales pitch in disguise with very little useful information, and I don't want you to spend the whole time just waiting for the catch. This workshop is chock full of good information, and a lot of the resources that I'm going to mention are free. At the end, I am going to spend just a few minutes to share about my upcoming course on how to recover from autistic burnout, because for some of you, that will genuinely be a good fit. So yes, there's a bit of a sales pitch at the end. And I'd rather just let you know that up front. If you know that's not for you, you can leave before then or ignore that part, but I'll let you know when it's coming. If it's not for you, you can take everything that's useful out of this and buy nothing for me, and I'll be glad that you came. That accomplishes my other mission of being genuinely useful to the autistic community. I just want to let you know what to expect so that you can relax and learn. Either way, I hope you get a lot out of this today that you can use in your real life. So let's get into it. All right, so here's the plan for today, because knowing what to expect reduces stress. We're going to start with a little bit about my background and then quickly get into why standard burnout advice leads you in the wrong direction for autistic burnout. And then we're going to go through the 5 stages of autistic burnout and recovery. And for each one, I'll share a little bit about what it actually feels like from the inside, what helps and what backfires, including some things that you might expect and some things that you might not expect, some things that are actually counterproductive. As we go, we'll talk about what's actually needed for genuine recovery, which involves two separate things happening at once and why you need both of them. And then I'll share a little bit at the end about Beyond Autistic Burnout, my course, for those who are interested, and then I'll open it up to Q&A. So does that sound good? Okay, so here's a little bit about me so that you know the perspective that what I'm about to present is coming from. So I'm Heather Cook, and I figured out that I'm autistic 10 years ago at 34, and I got an official diagnosis at 35. And that led to understanding so much more about myself, my sensory differences, figuring out a lot about my social issues, and I went deep into trying to understand and gradually heal my autistic burnout, depression, anxiety, and complex relational trauma. A few years later, I also figured out that I'm ADHD, and that combo explained even more. I've been through autistic burnout myself many times, and twice it was so bad that it completely shut down my life long term. It was after that last burnout that I got to a place that I needed to figure out what was going on and how to break the cycle. And over several years, I completely deconstructed my life, questioned everything that I had ever been taught, looked deep inside, worked through my gunk, and gradually built a new life that's actually sustainable now, a life that I love. And I've been burnout free since 2015. Now I'm a professional certified coach and Martha Beck certified master coach. And for the last 6 years, I've worked with hundreds of people, usually late identified autistics and ADHDers like myself, to navigate autistic burnout and recovery, to understand, accept, and trust themselves more fully, to improve the things that they do have control over in their life, like communication and relationships, anxiety, sensory stuff, and to build an autism positive life that is actually sustainable and enjoyable. How to do that is what I want to talk about today. And it involves setting aside most of what you think that you know about burnout? So let's start with that. Okay, so I'm guessing that you probably already have an idea of what burnout is, maybe some experience with it yourself. But did you know that there are actually different kinds of burnout? Most of what we hear about in mainstream media is work burnout or caregiver burnout. It's stress-related exhaustion. And that's pretty straightforward. When too much has been on your plate for too long, the system needs to recharge. What's needed is to reduce the load, rest, maybe make some adjustments in your life so that you have more reasonable expectations on your time and have support, and then you can ease back in. Unfortunately, that doesn't get rid of autistic burnout. It's not that that's bad advice, it's just woefully incomplete. So if that's all you do, it might slow down the progression of symptoms, but it doesn't get rid of them. This is a major reason why autistic burnout recovery can take so long for many people, because that alone doesn't deal with what's really going on. Because autistic burnout is fundamentally different with different causes. So what it takes to recover is different. I get into this in a lot more depth in the Explaining Burnout workshop, but here's the short version. So the standard burnout model treats it as a volume problem. Too many demands, not enough recovery. You fix it by taking things away and resting to get your capacity back. But autistic burnout is a mismatch problem. It's about the gap between how an autistic nervous system actually works and what the world has been demanding of it for years, often for decades. The drain isn't only from having too much to do, though that can be a part of it, of course, but much more than that is the hidden, constant, invisible cause of existing in environments that drain energy and give nothing back. The sensory cost of an open office plan, for example, of having unexpected phone calls, of every fluorescent lit grocery store, every crowded hallway. The cognitive work of processing social situations analytically that neurotypical people navigate more intuitively. Planning when to smile, how someone might take every innocent comment, trying to read subtext. It's the exhausting, continuous performance of trying to come off as normal and hiding our autistic traits, needs, and the things that drain our energy so as not to annoy or bother other people. Not asking for things that we need because we know that nothing will be changed anyway, except getting labeled as picky or high maintenance. So what's the point of bringing it up? The autistic community calls this masking. It's being hypervigilant about everything from who and what is around us to perceived demands, any potential rejection, triggers, to other people's perceptions of us. It's ruminating on the people and experiences that have hurt us, comments that were made years ago, worries and fears about the hard things that we're dealing with in life, and the injustice of it all, perseverating on decisions, and being really hard on yourself about all of this. These are invisible costs. They don't show up on a to-do list or a schedule, but they're real and they're relentless. And they accumulate for years before the system finally gives out. Is this familiar to anyone? So this was described in the research by Raymaker and colleagues in 2020. They defined autistic burnout as a state of physical and mental fatigue, heightened stress, and diminished capacity to manage life skills, sensory input, and social interactions, which comes from years of being severely overtaxed by the strain of trying to live up to the demands that are out of sync with our needs. This has been accumulating for years, not just months or days or the most recent job. This has been going on for our entire lives, and it involves every area of life. And many of the things that would help a neurotypical person in burnout are the very things that cause autistic burnout in the first place. And that's why the recovery path also has to be different. Does that make sense? So here's the deal. Autistic burnout needs a different approach, one that addresses the actual causes. So let's get into those causes and how it shows up and what the recovery path looks like, one stage at a time, because autistic burnout follows a fairly predictable path. And everyone asks me how long this is supposed to take or how long it's going to take. So I'm going to give some rough timelines for each of these stages, but please keep in mind that how long the stages last can vary considerably from person to person based upon your circumstances. But there are patterns. So I'm going to offer some ideas of how long it can take under average conditions if you're actually working on the things in that stage. But please take these with a very large grain of salt. Okay, so stage one is what I call the narrowing. Here's what it feels like inside. Stage one is when burnout is approaching, but it could still be prevented if it's identified early and action is taken. And this is a warning period. The approaching burnout can last anywhere from months to decades. Typically, if a major burnout is coming, it will build up for a long time before burnout actually hits. The hard thing about the narrowing stage is that from the outside, and often from the inside, things look more or less fine. You'll feel stressed, overwhelmed, possibly getting sick more easily. Concentration becomes harder, brain fog is getting worse, thinking feels slower, words are harder to find. You lose your train of thought mid-sentence. But things like going to work, planning a trip, major life th thing, yeah, major life changes, these things can feel really overwhelming. And small things like fetching the mail, getting food for yourself, leaving the house, get harder and harder, sometimes in ways that are really hard to explain. You might get more irritable, have a shorter temper. Other people might find that they're walking on eggshells around you. Sensory stuff gets harder to deal with and more aggravating. You say no to anything that's not absolutely necessary, or agree, but then back out of plans at the last minute more and more often. When I was a high school teacher in this phase, I managed to keep teaching, but started skipping optional staff events, using half-true excuses to protect my weekends and breaks, and then not going to the staff room at lunch, not talking to other teachers or admin, skipping more and more meetings. I spent less time with friends and sometimes didn't reply to their messages. Nobody around me thought anything was seriously wrong. They could tell that I was stressed, but everyone's stressed, so they didn't think much of it. And it doesn't always look like you're doing less. I've had clients who kept up a demanding life the whole time, using that to stay steady, to keep going, while the narrowing was happening entirely on the inside, like they were feeling more and more empty. Is any of this familiar? I'm getting some agreement in the chat. Yeah. Yeah, so here's what actually helps in this stage. Any kind of support that means that you don't have to spend energy on things that aren't absolutely necessary. So giving yourself or your loved one, if someone else is in burnout in your life, giving yourself permission to drop things, permission to be less social without guilt, permission to say no to things, and also specific practical help, like not just saying, oh, let me know if you need help, but actually just doing things that you see need to be done. Like saying, I'm going to drop off some meals on Thursday because feeding yourself shouldn't be one more thing that you have to figure out. And then bringing some food by. My mom came over and did a lot of the cooking and cleaning for me, and that was huge. But just as important as the food and having clean dishes again was that she didn't make little comments about it. She didn't say what it cost her to do that for me or to make me feel like I needed to perform gratitude. I was grateful even when I couldn't express it at the time. The social and internal judgment components of autistic burnout are huge, and not adding to them is incredibly important. Along those lines, another incredibly important part is to believe them when they tell you that they're struggling or that they can't do something. Don't brush it off or think that they're exaggerating or make light of it. Take it seriously. They might have a genuine physical incapacity to do something, even something that they could have done before, but now they can't because of autistic burnout. Um, and sometimes it's not the physical thing, it's overwhelm. And helping them through that is the best thing that you can do. But don't assume that it's just overwhelm and minimize it. Just believe them and ask them if you can support and what kind of support would be helpful. Maybe offering options so they don't have to think about what could be helpful. Helping them feel supported and cared for, no matter what their current capabilities are, is amazing. And if you're supporting someone in burnout, please learn about it yourself. Don't expect them to teach you. That's energy that they don't have right now. And that's why I made this workshop and the Explaining Burnout workshop. Those are great places to start, but keep learning. This is just the tip of the iceberg. Okay, so what backfires in the narrowing? So, in this stage, almost anything that is trying to push yourself or to push them to get back to normal will backfire. So back to normal was the life that you got into that got you into burnout. So why would you want to get back to that? So what I mean is any kind of encouragement to push through, to get out more socially, to exercise, to do the things that you used to do. Any expectation, spoken or unspoken, that this should be quick or easy, that they should be able to bounce back, that a few days off should be enough, that there's something wrong with them if they can't cut it, that they're a burden, that other people can handle a whole lot more, so why should they be able, like, why can't they do that? I can practically guarantee you that all of these thoughts are going on in their head. They don't need to hear them reinforced from the outside as well. And by the way, none of those are true. We don't have time right now to deconstruct them, but I do that in my course Beyond Autistic Burnout. Also, any framing that this is a personal failing or something that they should be able to handle better is not helpful. It's also not true. And putting the blame on them for something that was done to them by the expectations that they worked valiantly to meet in the only way that they knew how is unfair and just adds to the burnout. So, how is this landing so far? Good? Okay. All right. So, stage two is what I call the deep depths of burnout. This is when burnout has moved from impending to full force. It's often what people mean when they talk about hitting a wall or crashing. This stage can last anywhere from a few months to several years, depending on how much support and accommodation the person can get and how much they're able to reduce the demands on their life. The experience is pretty much what you'd expect from a nervous system that has run out of resources. The exhaustion is all-consuming. It's not situational anymore, it's constant. And rest doesn't fix it in the way that rest usually does. You might sleep or be in bed or on the couch most of the day and still be wiped out. The brain fog is pervasive. It's like thinking through pea soup or concrete. You might walk into a room and not remember why. You'll lose your train of thought mid-sentence. You go to get something and forget it 3 times in a row. You forget the name of common objects. I would often be like, I would pick up something and be like, what is this? The thing that you put water in so that you can drink out of it, what's that called again? A cup? It would be so frustrating. This can look a lot like the early stages of dementia, but it's not. And don't worry, as burnout gets better, this gradually goes away. In the deep depths, you lose skills that you've had for years or decades. One of my clients who had always been able to drive suddenly couldn't. Another couldn't socialize. Another could barely manage a shower, let alone the entire routine of washing and drying and getting dressed. Your sensory tolerance completely bottoms out. Things that were merely annoying become actually unbearable. The smell in the car that was fine becomes intolerable. The background noise of the neighbor's lawnmower becomes physically painful. Every little annoyance is magnified 100-fold. And then there's the isolation. You're pulling back from people in a way that can look a lot like agoraphobia, except that it's not about fear, not in that way. It's exhaustion. It's that being around people, even people that you love, even when nothing is actually going wrong, costs energy because the social processing, the fears of what they're thinking about you and how your life is going, and the judgments, they run the whole show and they run the whole time in the background. What often gets dropped first in this stage is the optional stuff, friendships, hobbies, creative projects. Then, as things get worse, politeness starts going. The ability to soften your words or to show other people that you care about them. Not because you stopped caring, but because there's literally no energy left to express it. And then there's the shame and the guilt about not being able to do things, about needing help, about taking up space, about not being who you used to be, about not responding to texts, about what people will think of you, about what's going to happen to you. Because there's also a sense that this will last forever, that everything is awful, it will always be awful, and that it will never get better. This isn't catastrophizing, that is also possible, but that's not what this is. It's an altered perspective that comes from severe depletion. And if you're in the deep depths, I want to tell you that it is possible for this to get better. No matter how bleak it looks right now, no matter how hopeless it feels, it is possible for this to get better. I say that because I know I've been there. I know that there are things that right now that you can't see because they're in the future or they're outside of your current experience, but they are real. I felt that complete helplessness, that it will never get better. Oh, I felt it so hard for a long, long time. But it did get better, a teeny bit at a time. And I've helped many people to get out of that and to make their lives genuinely better, a teeny bit at a time. It can happen, and it can happen for you. And by the way, I think it's actually important that the improvement happens a teeny bit at a time, because if it were all of a sudden, it would be so overwhelming that it wouldn't stick. Like you actually need time to adjust to each of the little improvements, one little bit at a time. I think that that is, um, it's a form of grace. It helps, even though it's deeply frustrating in the moment, and you just want it all to be better. If that happened, I don't think we'd be able to take it. Okay, so let's talk about what helps and what doesn't. Here's what actually helps. It's reducing the external load and the internal load. That means both reducing the things that you have to do and reducing the shame about needing to do less. Reducing the shame isn't fluff. It isn't going soft. It isn't toxic positivity. And it isn't optional. It is critical work. And it is work, and it's hard because it's fighting against so much of what we've been trained to believe about ourselves, other people, and society. But a lot of what we've been trained to believe is toxic and just plain wrong. and benefits other people. This is what I get into in depth in Beyond Autistic Burnout. It's the how to do this and how to tell for yourself what is true, along with some really practical things as well. Okay, so as to the practical helps, things, again, doing things like bringing food, handling a phone call for them, doing a load of laundry, and whenever possible, not requiring them to ask for it or to explain it or to perform gratitude for it because they won't have the energy. And giving yourself permission not to produce, to be useless for a while, to take up space without having to earn the right to. And this might sound strange, but it also helps to believe that this is real, that it makes sense that you're in autistic burnout and that you're not making this up, that you're not exaggerating. Okay, so what backfires in this stage is almost every form of pressure or expectation, pushing them to do more, even gently, even with the best of intentions. Even research shows that a little movement helps with depression. Well, yes, but that's not what this is. If they themselves want to move a little, that might genuinely help a little bit, but the expectation to move backfires. Does that distinction make sense? Okay. So, also, any kind of behavioral activation protocols will backfire, like getting them into structure too early, any phased return to work programs, any expectation of a timeline, like questioning how long this is going to take, asking if they have a plan, what's going to come next, any kind of things like, well, action precedes motivation. Just push yourself to do it, and then you'll be happy you did it. All of that backfires. Also, any kind of visible worry about the person will backfire. Check-ins about progress, anything that implies that this should be resolved by now, because that will come across as a demand and it adds pressure, which magnifies the guilt and the shame and the negative judgments and the fears that they're already experiencing and makes it harder for them to do the things that would actually help. If you're supporting them, your job isn't to fix this. Your job is to not add to the load. So, what actually gets people out of the deep depths is time and a lot of rest and enough support so that the load is actually manageable and that the person starts getting tiny bits of energy back and starting to just barely question the shame and the fears and the negative internal self-talk, just cracking a little wedge in it that there might be some other option. Actually, deconstructing it will happen later. But the thought that maybe it's not completely true, that will lead to moving into the next stage, which is what I call the unraveling. So this is early recovery, and it's a stage where the real work of dismantling what caused the burnout in the first place actually begins. But let me pause there. How is this landing so far?
Oh, God.
I'm seeing some thumbs up. Yes, good. All of this. Great. Um, I'm glad that this is resonating. I'm also not glad that this is resonating because it means that you've been through it and it sucks to go through this. Yeah, so someone says very helpful. I think I'm in stage two. I'm also hoping that you can identify for yourself what stage you're in. Yeah, this track's 100% very helpful. Great. Okay, so let's talk about the unraveling, what it feels like inside. After enough rest, a teeny bit of capacity starts to return, just enough to want to get better, even if it still feels overwhelming and you don't know how. Excuse me, allergies. Okay, so this is a tiny, fragile shift. The sense that maybe this doesn't have to last forever. You start looking for answers, for strategies, solutions, for someone who gets it. And if you're lucky, what you find is that if you're lucky, the solutions you find aren't quick fixes. They're not hacks or supplements. Though those may genuinely be useful, they're not going to solve the real issues. The real solutions involve unraveling what caused the burnout in the first place, like the masking, the internalized ableism, decades of overriding your own body's signals, the shame of being different. Genuine recovery requires two things happening at once: unlearning the old messaging and building new ways of operating designed for an autistic nervous system instead of borrowing from a world that wasn't designed for you. This stage typically lasts 1 to 3 years if you're actually working through it, though it's not linear, but this is real work, even if it doesn't look like a job. Something that I came to in this stage was that I had to let go of what should work and go with what does work. Let go of what I should need and accept what I do need. So, in my own experience and in my work with clients, I've identified 5 interconnected areas of unlearning and building an autism positive life that I've found necessary for genuine, sustainable burnout recovery. These aren't sequential, and progress in one tends to ripple into the others. And I go into each of these in a lot more depth in my course, but I want to mention them briefly here. So these are the things that just need to be addressed in order to really get out of autistic burnout. The first is internalized ableism, dismantling the belief that failing to function neurotypically means that something is wrong with you, and all of the shame and the guilt and the negative self-talk and the judgments around what you should or shouldn't be able to do, and how quickly and at what capacity, and all sorts of things like that. The second is authenticity, figuring out who you actually are versus what you took on just to survive. Your identity, your preferences, your needs, what's you and what's the mask. One client felt ashamed that she needed people in a different way than everyone else and wondered if a truly regulated person would need that kind of support. That kind of shame is common here. The third is internal awareness, learning to notice and actually use your body and emotional signals as forms of useful information instead of overriding them, and starting to do so in small ways that don't get overwhelming. The fourth area is sensory management, making your environment actually work for your nervous system, both in your own home and how to survive better in the wider world. Like fluorescent lighting that never used to register as a problem can suddenly start causing headaches and fatigue. Small sensory things start mattering in new ways, and learning how to address your needs within the confines of reality starts becoming a skill that you can get better at. And the fifth area is energy management. It's learning how to stop before you hit the wall, not after you're forced to. It's taking breaks before you're finished, not after you've already crashed. It's resting without guilt. It's how to not overdo it when you start to feel better and have some energy again so that you don't just crash. It's building capacity back up very, very slowly and learning how to do it so that the progress sticks. So these are the 5 areas that are necessary to actually build your autism positive life. And as you do that, what happens is you get out of burnout. Okay, so in this unraveling stage in early burnout recovery, what helps? For support people, uh, what helps here is giving the person in burnout explicit permission to do nothing. without any conditions attached, allowing them to rest without implying that resting means something bad. It's trusting their process. If therapy starts to feel like a chore, that's a signal worth paying attention to, not pushing through. If it feels good, help make it possible. Let them take the lead in what's helpful for them. Step back and let them take the lead in their own recovery. Please don't ask them to reassure you. Do your own emotional processing somewhere else. And also learn about autistic burnout yourself. Don't make them explain it to you. And please have patience. This is going to be a long process. And this phase specifically is a difficult exploration phase for them to go through. And from the outside, it can look like not much is happening because a lot of the work is internal, but it is real. And what backfires in this stage is introducing structure before there's capacity to actually use it, setting goals, plans, getting back to work. It's too early for all of that. Sending them to career counselors before the inner work is actually done. If someone is in the middle of dismantling a lifetime of who they had to be, and you send them off to plan a career path, they'll either comply out of obligation, which is just masking again, or they will crash. Also, financial pressure that creates the kind of urgency that caused burnout in the first place will make this work. So any ways that you can help with that, take the pressure off financially are amazing. I know that that's not possible for everyone, but when it is, that's great. Also, what backfires is tracking progress, making little comments or being concerned, communicating that there is a timeline in your mind, whether spoken or unspoken. Also, comparing them to who they used to be. You used to be able to do this. Why can't you do this anymore? It used to be fine. Also, expecting them to manage your feelings about their recovery. I understand that this is scary to watch someone go through, and that is real, and you need support too, and it needs to come from somewhere else. Okay, so at the next, the, sorry. So as you work through these 5 stages of recovery, you will start to notice a shift. It might not look a whole lot different from the outside, but it is. More capacity is returning. And in some ways, this can be the most dangerous stage. This is what I call the expansion. Because you have more energy. Not a lot, but more. And your mood is somewhat better. There might be a little bit of optimism, a little bit of hope that it can actually get better. And that can be a confusing mix of hope and frustration. And here's why this is the most dangerous stage. It's because it's easy to think that you're further along than you actually are and do too much and push yourself back deeper into burnout than before. Has anyone here done that? You think you've got more energy than you do and overdo it, and then you're wiped for weeks? Yeah. Uh-huh. I've done that way too many times. Cognitive function lags behind mood and energy. So focus or sustained attention, complex thinking are still unreliable. It might be fine some days or some parts of days, but then it just goes back to the brain fog and it's like, what happened? Or what am I doing wrong? And will this ever get better? And so even when things are improving, it's bumpy. Let me put it that way. Yeah, someone says, but it's so hard when there's a spark of energy and you just want to surf this wave. That's the danger. That is exactly the danger. And I understand it so intense, so intimately. Um, but learning how to not do that, how to enjoy that you have energy, like how to celebrate that and how to use some, but not to overdo it. Uh, so brain fog can still linger here too, but in smaller ways. Forgetting to pour the coffee that you just made, leaving the banana out of the smoothie, walking out the door with something that you needed. It's typically milder than in early stages, but it doesn't just cleanly end because things are getting better. It's a very gradual, slow improvement. One client who felt noticeably better started stacking a full health regimen on herself all at once. Every day she would cook meals, take a walk, play brain games. And in the middle of all of that, she said that she was worried that she was burning herself out on doing things that would get her out of burnout. And like, I get that. See, these weren't bad things. It was just too much too soon. It's also common for people to start thinking that they can work again, and they start talking about job hunting or planning a career shift. Often they're not actually doing the job search yet, but they think that they could or should, and they talk about it and they plan it and like they intend to, but then they don't get around to it. And that just creates more internal pressure, which sends them backwards. And I want to tell you, if you're doing that, this isn't the stage for that. You will get to the point where you can do the job search, but it will happen faster if you don't push yourself into it. It's a little bit early for that right now. And you can tell if it's early if you keep intending to, but not following through. If you're actually able to start following through, then you're in the next stage, which is where you can actually do it. Okay, so in this stage, the I can do more feeling is real, but the reserves aren't back yet. Overdoing it here means that setbacks will take days or weeks to recover from. Learning to interpret your body signals for how much capacity you actually have is the real work that you're doing now. It's practicing how to do that. It's how to stop before you hit the wall, not after it, and how to tell the difference, and how to deal with the internal self-talk that is pushing you to push and to do more, to ride that wave. Um, this stage typically lasts around 1 to 3 years, and counterintuitively, capacity will grow faster if you don't push it. Okay, so what helps in the expansion is celebrating the real, specific, genuine progress that is happening without projecting a timeline or expectations onto it. The changes that you're making are necessary and the progress is real, even when it's small. Again, like I said earlier, small progress is actually more useful because it helps your nervous system adjust to the changes without it being overwhelming so that defense mechanisms don't just stop your progress. Giving your space to continue building capacity and learning to trust yourself. Keep recovery timelines, keep recovery time built in between things. Like plan for it. Plan that it's going to take recovery time and just accept that. Plan for it. Allow exit options for anything that you've planned in advance so that you make it to the actually make it to the appointment and don't crash for 3 days after. Um, so here, what you can tell, what you can use to tell whether you're making progress is noticing how long it takes you to recover when you crash, and just you're going to crash. It's going to happen. That's part of the learning process. But it should be moving from taking weeks to a week or two to a few days to a day or two to half a day. Like over time, if the recovery time gets smaller and smaller, that is a sign that you're making actual progress. Does that make sense? Okay. And what backfires? Um, so what backfires is interpreting the increased capacity as evidence that recovery is basically done. This is one of the most common ways that people relapse at this stage. The person looks so much better. The family relaxes, expectations start creeping back in, and then they crash. Pushing past actual capacity to meet your own or other people's expectations is what causes relapse here more than anything else. But one of the works in this stage is to break down your expectations, to deconstruct them, and to build up more reasonable expectations of what's possible and what's doable. One client described spiraling into all or nothing thinking around exercise and daily habits, doing great for a week and then abandoning the whole thing over one bad day. I say this to clients so often that it's practically become a mantra. It's not all or nothing. Also, what backfires is removing exit options or booking things that don't have any kind of flexibility, measuring progress against who they used to be instead of who you're becoming, and reinforcing painful narratives whenever you have a setback. Any expectation that they should move faster or that they should be back to normal by now, that you look so much better, why is this not over? And again, the timelines for this are still measured in years, not months. And putting your own disappointment or grief on them. Your grief about the version of them that used to be is real and it needs a home, but not on them. You need to deal with that yourself, possibly with your own therapist or coach. Okay. And as you're working on this more and more, it will get better. You will be deconstructing all of that stuff that all of those old narratives, unlearning the the painful, untrue beliefs that we've been taught in this culture, in this capitalist, neurotypical, colonized, traumatized, ableist society. And as you deconstruct that more and more and see through the lies and trust yourself to be able to discern the truth, and you start making those small changes, they will grow and grow and grow, and your capacity will come back, and your thought patterns will shift. And this is where new possibilities actually become possible. And you'll start to be building your life, like actually constructing a different life, not because you have to, not because you need to make money, not because anyone's expecting it of you, but because there's something in you that really wants to do things differently, that wants to try things, that wants to work, that wants to make your life different and better. And you gradually, slowly, almost unnoticeably start to go from imagining plans of things that you might do next to starting to actually do something about it, to start exploring new options, to try new things. This is what I called in my experience, in my journey, I called it trying things again for the first time. It might have been the same things that I had done before, but it felt completely different because I was doing it in a new way and I was different and the internal narratives were completely different. And it felt different to do, and I could try it again for the first time. This is when you start researching things that you might want in a new career, or taking a class, or leaving the house once in a while, or taking more action on medical things that you need to take care of, speaking up for yourself more, practicing boundaries more, making little changes in old habits, looking into moving to a new place, looking at job listings, like actually doing the things, not just thinking about it or planning or guilting yourself because you're not doing it. One client sold his condo and moved to another country for a fresh start and turned down a job that would have been a safe bet and but had been wrong for him because he wanted to live the version of himself who made an independent choice, not the version who let circumstances decide for him. I've had a number of clients who switched jobs and found that in the job hunt, even in this economy, like even in the intense job market that we've got right now, they were making more intentional choices about not applying to everything and being picky about which jobs they were looking for, and they showed up at interviews differently, and it just worked better, and they did eventually get a new job, one that they loved, and they were like, "Oh wow, now I can see how toxic that old environment was. This one is so much better, and I can actually do it. And it's still hard, and I'm having to practice things in new ways, how to practice being a person in this environment in a new way, but it works and it feels better, and it's uncomfortable because it's new and unfamiliar, not because it's actually a bad situation." So some of this growth work is work oriented, some of it is personal, some of it is family, some of it is communicating differently, some of it is leaning into your relationships in different ways. Some of it might be leaving behind some relationships or finding new relationships that are much more supportive and better for you. And even the ones that you keep, they shift and they become better and you work together better. Um, and there's this layer of curiosity and genuine interest and starting to enjoy things more, feeling more hope. And these are all really good signs. I don't want to suggest that everyone makes these gigantic, huge changes in their life. Many people do, and also many people don't. The but the internal changes is universal. If you get to the stage, like that's what's going on. The internal shifts are real, and those are huge. And for support people, please encourage this. But again, without any sense of pressure or obligation, just enjoy the process. Like lean into this new person that you're getting, um and it can be so much better. So I also want to say that most likely that the plans that you start making and the interests that you develop in these stages will probably change two or three times, two or three major times before you actually settle on something. That is normal and it's to be expected. It doesn't mean that you're doing anything wrong. It's just part of the exploration that's in this phase. And that's a good thing because what's going on here is building a new life. And it's exploring things that you haven't actually experienced before. And so your idea of what you think it's going to be is going to turn out to be partially accurate and partially not accurate. And you're going to have to adjust based upon that. And that's okay. It's just a part of the phase. It's exploration and creativity and figuring out what works for you. And if you're actually going to get out of burnout, this second chance life has to be fundamentally different in very specific ways from the life that you had before. Just getting some energy or health back and then going back to what you used to do is going to land you right back in another burnout because the fundamental reasons that you went into burnout didn't change. What we're doing here in the second chance life is actually changing those fundamental things. True recovery requires building a different life. And it might look different from what you're expecting. It might look somewhat unconventional, maybe only a little bit, maybe in really big ways. I know some people who have made some very significant countercultural changes, but most people don't actually need or want to do that. That's totally okay. The radical changes are going to be more internal, letting go of the negative self-talk, of the people pleasing, of the unhealthy relationship dynamics with certain people in your life, learning to speak up for yourself, saying what you really mean rather than deferring to avoid rocking the boat. And depending on the family dynamics, some of these changes can be really hard for the people around you to adjust to, and can be really hard for you to to carry out. It can be really scary. And sometimes it's uncomfortable, again, because it's unfamiliar, but is a good thing, and it just takes an adjustment. But these changes are not a problem, they're the whole point. This is what we're leaning into. A sustainable life looks different from an unsustainable one. The version of this person that comes out the other side is someone who's more themselves, not less, who's more honest about what they need, more boundaried, less willing to push through things that don't work for them. And from the outside, especially if you are used to the version that was performing, this can feel really strange. It can even feel like a loss. But what's actually happening is that they're getting a chance to build a life that is designed around who they actually are, not who they had to pretend to be. And in my experience, both personally and with clients, that life turns out to be better than anything that they could have imagined before the burnout. It takes time and this takes work, but it's possible and it's worth it. It is so worth it. And this stage, as far as I'm concerned, lasts the rest of your life. I've been out of the worst parts of burnout for more than a decade, but I still consider myself in burnout recovery. And I still have to be cautious and mindful of not overdoing it. My capacity is much bigger now. I can do a lot more on a daily basis. I'm running my own business, basically working full time, um, and have side interests as well. But it's easy enough for me to go back to old thoughts, at least briefly, but I've made enough changes that they don't last. The new one keeps sticking. The new version of me keeps pulling me out of those old thoughts so that I can do a lot more. And when things get hard, I can push through a little bit for a little while, but I feel it and I use that as information to say, oh, that's the old narrative taking over. I need to, I know what I need to do. And I get myself out because burnout is no longer an option for me. And I've learned as part of this process how to tell when I'm starting to go in that direction and how to make adjustments and what adjustments are needed and how to give myself permission to do that, even when there are consequences, because those consequences are never as bad as another burnout would be. Um, oops. So, what recovery really looks like. I've mentioned this before, but I want to be really clear. Recovery isn't just getting energy back and going back to what you used to do. Family and friends often expect the same person to come out of burnout that they used to know and expect them to just go back to what they used to do, but that's what led to burnout. Real recovery is changing the actual circumstances of your life, both the external stuff and the internal stuff, enough that the actual causes of burnout are either gone or, let's be realistic, reduced enough to be manageable and to learn new skills for how to manage the things that you can't just get rid of and how to be autistic in this world in a way that actually works. Okay, so everything that I've laid out today, that mismatch, these stages, what actually helps and what backfires, this is what I believe it actually takes, not to just get some energy back, but to change your life so that it's sustainable and that it feels good to you, to break the cycle and to not ever have to go through this again. And I mean that whether you work with me or with someone else or figure it out on your own, this is what it takes. What I've seen this over and over and over. There's no version where you get to skip the deep work and just get handed a burnout-free life. But you don't have to muddle through it on your own or to do it without a map. If you're interested in having some guidance and a structured approach that walks you through this step by step, that's what my course is for. It's called Beyond Autistic Burnout, and it takes you through what needs unlearning and how to do that, how to go into the deep stuff underneath it, the new skills and strategies that make a different life possible, and with practical tools and techniques along the way to make everyday little things and big things better. So if you're interested, here's what you need to know. Um, the course is called Beyond Autistic Burnout, and it is starting in October 9th. So there's a little bit of time to sign up. There's no pressure, no rush. Um, but it's a 9-month course that will keep it small enough, gradual enough that it's not overwhelming, but still have support along the way. Because let's get real, it's not going to be a quick thing. This is not a quick fix. It's um, so that's why it's not a weekend course or a couple of month or two. Like I want to be there with you as you're working through this stuff, as you're facing it in your real life for an extended period of time. Um, so it's 9 months, and we'll go through each of these five areas of burnout recovery in depth, uh, with both the inner work and the practical stuff. So the full cost of it is $900, and I offer a payment plan for $80 a month for 12 months. You can go to autismchrysalis.com/burnout for more info to get all of the practical details. The reason I created this was that I kept seeing the same patterns in all of my clients, and I was addressing the same things with them over and over and over. And eventually I was like, I need to create this. Like I need to put this in a way that I can say the same things and teach the same tools and help people work through the same issues, because people are having the same kinds of problems, even if the circumstances of their lives are different. Like the types of problems are the same, the types of guilt and the shame are the same, the types of things that help are the same. And so I put this together. I've already run it through once, did it a few years ago, had some really amazing feedback. And by the way, if you've already been through it once, there is an alumni discount, a pretty significant discount for those who want to go through it again and get even more out of it this time and have the support again. So if you're interested, great. If this isn't for you, I hope that this workshop has been useful. Um, okay, so I lost my place in my notes, and I just want to wrap up here with a closing thoughts, and then we will take some Q&A. Okay, so just a few closing thoughts. The single most impactful thing that a supporter can do is to believe the person in burnout and to say so, not once, but repeatedly in simple terms. This is real. This makes sense. You're not making it up. My clients tell me over and over that the most helpful thing that anyone did for them is just to believe them. And the most common complaint that I hear from autistics in burnout is that nobody believes them. And to reduce the pressure, help where you can, provide practical supports, and learn about autistic burnout yourself. Don't put the burden on them to explain it to you. And for those of you in burnout, this is real. You're not making it up. You're not exaggerating it. This is a thing that thousands of people are going through. You are not alone, and there is help. It is possible for this to get better. I've lived it. I've seen so many people get better. It's absolutely possible, even when it feels like everything is stacked against you, when you have no support, when there's no one helping you, when like the world is against you. It is possible. You can't necessarily change everything in the outside world, but you can change little things in your life, and those can make a huge difference. Okay. And just a reminder that true burnout recovery isn't about getting back to who you were before the burnout. That's what caused the burnout in the first place. It's about changing the internal stuff and the external practical stuff in your life to to make it better, to create a second chance life. It takes time, it takes work, but it's possible, and it is so worth it. Thank you for your attention, and I wish you a neuro wonderful day. Okay. So now I would like to open it up to questions, comments, compliments, complaints. What are your thoughts? You're welcome to share in the chat. You're welcome to um, raise your hand or unmute yourself and um, speak if you would like to. whatever works for you. And I will look through the chat and try to answer some of the questions that have come in. The first one that I see is, can spending too much time and energy on a special interest become exhausting and potentially worsen autistic burnout? For me, it feels enjoyable, but it also takes up a lot of time and can be a bit exhausting. So, yes, it's possible. And I would caution you against going to the all or nothing extreme of, oh, well, that means that I can't spend time on my special interest at all. The the path to burnout recovery is, excuse me, is allowing yourself to enjoy the things that you're enjoying and to be able to tell when you're getting tired so that you don't just keep going when you're tired and then it becomes exhausting. So it's not that the special interest itself is exhausting, I'm guessing. Um, Even if it's a very physical thing, I don't know what your special interest is, but it's probably not the special interest itself, but doing it too much or for too long. But that is the skill, is learning how to tell. Someone asked if we already signed up in November, do we get the early bird group session too? Um, it was quite discounted. Oh, yes, so you took it before, it sounds like. Um, yeah, if you've already signed up for the course, I believe you should have it. So you can check um, to confirm for yourself if you've got it. If you go into the course materials under the schedule, there's a schedule page, and scroll down to the bottom if it also includes a schedule for the early bird um, group Q&A session, then you got it. And if you think you should have it and it's not there, email me and I'll figure it out. Someone said, I did round one and it seriously saved my life. Oh, hi, I know who you are. I've continued to return to the material periodically since then, and I always get more out of it. Best money I've ever spent. Woohoo! Yay! That's what I love. Um, Someone else shared, I did it asynchronously as well, and I just learned what autistic, and, I had just learned I was autistic and had no idea where or how to turn. It was so helpful. Yay! Woohoo! Uh, Thank you for the talk. Yeah. See, someone else asked if we already signed up in November, do we get? Okay, I already answered that. Um, how linear are these stages? I feel like I've never really burned out to the extent described, but I definitely feel a lot of resonance with stages 1 and 3, and maybe that makes it harder to accept that this might still be burnout. So not everyone goes into the deep depths, and it can still genuinely be burnout. So if you didn't get to that, like hitting the wall stage where your life collapses and you are physically unable to go to work and you end up quitting or getting fired because you cannot force yourself to show up. I've been there twice. Um, it doesn't have to be that bad to still be genuinely burnout. If you have been through stages 1 and 3 and didn't and skipped the hardcore deep steps, that's wonderful. Sometimes it takes getting to the deep depths before we will recognize that we need to stop. It did for me. Like I had to make it had to get that bad for me to acknowledge how much stress I had in my life and how much pain I was in. Um, Even right now, there's an old narrative in my voice saying, you can't say the word pain. You can't describe it as being that bad. But that's not true. It really was painful. I was in a lot of physical pain, a lot of mental pain, a lot of emotional pain, and I was ignoring it for a very long time because I couldn't let myself believe that it was that bad. And nothing objectively was terrible in my life. I wasn't in an abusive relationship or like I had a job and there was nothing that I could point to and say, oh, that's a particularly horrible thing. I should be fine. Like I had to get over that. I hate the phrase getting over it. It's just so ingrained in our culture. Like I had to learn to accept that it doesn't have to be objectively capital T trauma or abuse to still be bad enough to make changes. And getting back to your original question, yes, you don't have to go into the deep depths for it to be genuine burnout. And if these things are resonating with you, then the solutions are going to also resonate. And the solutions are going to be those 5 areas of recovery are going to be exactly what you need. Okay, so someone else asked, can dealing with the constant double empathy issues with neurotypicals to the point of a traumatic incident cause autistic burnout? Yes, it can. Absolutely. Someone else said, thank you very much. I'm thrilled that I'm not going nuts. Everything you said is so much me. Hmm, yeah. I feel like in order to heal and to go through the stages, I need to drastically change my engagement in social life. This makes me feel so lonely. I struggle at social settings. At the same time, it's really what I love. I am very confused. Do you have any thoughts on this? So many. Um, so yes, I would agree that there needs to be a drastic change in how you engage in social life, and that can be a very lonely experience. And it is also possible to engage in social stuff differently, but without masking. And that's the real skill to learn is how to actually lean more into your natural autistic communication style, but in a way that works better for neurotypicals, in a way that can bridge the gap so that you can be who you authentically are and they can adjust to that and they can be who they authentically are and they can adjust to you and like it works both ways and this can happen. It absolutely can happen, and it's a skill or a set of skills that can be learned. Uh, I always say that I have a high pain threshold and realize that this is nothing but masking. I believe you. I also describe myself as having a high pain threshold, and that's not necessarily a good thing. I hear so many people who are highly sensitive complaining about how sensitive they are and how much it hurts. I think that the other extreme is the people who have a high threshold for pain, and both of them can be very difficult experiences to live in. The sensitivity, because it's like everything feels so intense, and you feel, depending on how you experience it, it can be a sensory thing, it can be an emotional thing, it can be experiencing other people's realities. Like it can be, uh, but it's always a very intense experience. But not getting the feedback about what hurts or that it matters that it hurts can lead to getting into a lot of situations that are anywhere from damaging, draining, or actually dangerous. And by the way, it is also possible to be both. It can to have a very high pain threshold and also to be very highly sensitive. I identify as both of those in different ways. Someone else commented, also our internalized ableism that we can't allow things to hurt or to be hard. I often have to remind myself um, that my disability can actually be disabling. Yeah, yeah, working through that internalized ableism is so important and is also really hard to do. But as you learn how to do it, you will start to notice it more and more in your life and in your thoughts. I am still finding new ways that I am like, oh, that's probably ableism, isn't it? Yeah, yeah, it is. Okay. But when I notice it, now I know how to deconstruct it. Um, okay. I think that one thing which burned me was loneliness and my lack of structure in my grad school days, but I don't have energy to work. effectively at finding a day job with a steady schedule or confidence to try a business or freelance as serious money makers. I understand that. Um, and not knowing your circumstances, I'm just responding to the general concept of what you've described. Working through those 5 areas of burnout recovery is going to make the other things possible. It's going to make it possible to have more structure, helpful, useful structure in your days to get work or freelance or run a business if you choose to do those things. Um, and to also be less lonely because you'll be more authentic and finding people who appreciate that authentic version of you. And it might only be a few people. It doesn't have to be everyone. It's not going to be everyone. I will guarantee you it's not everyone. And that's true for everyone in the world, not just autistics. But like there is no person in the entire world, in the entire history of human civilization and life who absolutely everyone has completely loved and agreed with. It doesn't happen. No one, like not even Jesus, not Mohammed, not Mother Teresa, not Gandhi, like all of them also have people who absolutely hate them and they hate their guts and criticize them and think that they are terrible people. And like there is no one who everyone has agreed with, liked, and supported. So why do I think that I should be one of them? Like, why am I the exception? Why have I spent so much of my life trying to people please and adjust to everyone around me and be wrecked and hurt and destroyed when not everyone has responded well to me? Why has it sucked up so much of my energy ruminating over one person online or in person or in my family even who thought badly of me, who thought I was a jerk or an asshole or a who had whatever kind of opinion that they had about me? It doesn't mean that it's true. Just because someone thinks badly of you does not mean that what they think is true. And just because they don't like you doesn't mean that you're wrong. And I don't need to spend my life searching for that, seeking that validation from outside. When I have validation inside, when I know that I am doing the right thing, everything becomes so much easier. It takes up so much less energy. And honestly, that is one of the biggest things in burnout recovery is this internal stewing over stuff, perseverating over stuff, ruminating over things, the anxiety. It eats up so much energy that it makes everything else in life so much harder. And it makes like all the practical things so much more out of reach. When you work on this inner stuff, everything else becomes more manageable. I won't say it all just instantly becomes easier. Like it's not like the world suddenly miraculously changes and becomes accepting and loves you. Like nothing else changes, but you can deal with it better because you have the energy to deal with it. I'm not going to apologize for going off on a soapbox. Um, okay, so someone else wrote, going off of the double empathy question, is there a stage of being able to communicate effectively with neurotypicals? Maybe then that's an autistic issue separate from burnout. I think that communication issues do contribute to autistic burnout, absolutely. And yeah, as part of the stage 4 and 5, you start working on that practical skill that I was talking about of like how to lean more authentically and how to lean more into your authentic autistic communication style and still build bridge the gap between neurotypical communication style. I'm actually planning on doing a workshop or short training on that at some point of like specifically getting into communication techniques and skills and like how you do this um, in very practical examples. But the burnout course addresses the inner things that need to happen so that that becomes more of a practical possibility. Okay. Um, There's lots of great comments, and I want to comment on all of them, but I'm just looking for questions at this point. We've only got about 5 minutes left, and I would love to not go overtime for once. Okay, for those in stages one or early two, what is the best thing that we can do to stop the progression in burnout? The best thing you can do is to recognize your what's going on, especially if you're in stage one where it's still more preventable before you've hit the deep depths. Recognize that you are actually dealing with a lot and acknowledge that more than just like acknowledging it, letting it be real is one thing, but letting it become real in your life, like actually making changes. My job is stressing me out. Okay, I need to make some changes to that. Maybe I need to talk to my manager about taking this one or two things off of my plate because those are the things that stress me out the most. Or can I trade tasks with someone else so that it's not necessarily that I'm getting out of anything, but this thing is really hard for me, and but this task is more manageable and someone else doesn't like it. Can we trade? But they wouldn't mind doing this other thing that I don't like. Like that's just an option. But like reducing the practical things in your life that are stressing you out the most will make the biggest difference. And then also working on the inner guilt about doing that and the shame about needing that and the narratives that we've been taught in this culture about productivity and not being a burden and being a productive member of society and all of that kind of shit that we are trained to believe that is really just about other people, the people in power profiting off of us and teaching us that we need to put a collar around our own necks in order to serve them, and thinking that that's just how it is and that that's the way life is and that there's no difference, that there's no other option. There are other options. Um, but starting to question those narratives is going to give you some really great results. Okay, there is a lot of great discussion going on in the chat. I love how engaged you all are, or some of you are. I don't want to say all. Um, okay, any last questions? Anything that I've missed in the weird Zoom chain of comments? Okay, so let's wrap it up there. Thank you so much for being here, for taking the time to learn about this. Whether you're going through burnout yourself or you're supporting someone else, I am so happy that you're here and hope that you're taking away something practically useful. And if you are interested in Beyond Autistic Burnout, the website again is autismchrysalis.com/burnout. And I hope to see you there. Take care.